All right, well, welcome. We're gonna go ahead and open it. So this is our first time doing a live stream, so bear with us on the technology. We think we got everything, and Luke's been doing technology for a long time, but first time doing a live stream outside. So got a lot of people signed up, so we're gonna leave the kind of intro open for a few minutes, let everybody come in. Well, we'll just get started, so those on time don't have to wait, and those that are later, they lost out. My name is Nathan Heath, and behind the screen is my brother Luke. He does the tech, and I'm more the farmer side. Like I said, our business is Cultivate, and we build and install raised farm boxes in Central Texas, particularly the Austin area, and help people grow food. I've been involved in ag most of my life, and my passion is sharing my passion for growing food and helping others. So that's pretty much what this is about. We're hoping to do bi-weekly classes. So this is going to be more of a general overview, covers a couple subjects, do a Q&A, kind of find out what you as the gardening public want. And we're hoping to do them bi-weekly, so every other Tuesday. So we're just going to get started. So like I said, we do 4x8 boxes. We use 2x12s, so it makes the boxes about a foot deep. And the reason we do that size is the optimum size as far as the use of wood and the growing area, so you can access the bed from both sides. It's a little, if you just do 3 feet, it's a little too far to reach over without compacting the soil. And 2 feet, you're not really maximizing the space. The reason we do 2x12s opposed to 2x6 is for the depth. Soil is a living organism, and it needs to develop its own world. And so you need a lot of soil. And in Austin, in particular, we have a tremendous amount of soil types. Everything from up here, it's pretty much rock. Down in East Austin, it's more the black gumbo clay. We've got areas with red clay and sugar sand and all sorts of different things. So with a foot of soil growing up, really provides a good growing condition for most plants. And then also for root crops like carrots and turnips and daikon radishes and potatoes and stuff, it gives them enough area to develop to their full length. So that's one reason we do that. So just wanted to get that out of the way. One of the common things I see when I go out to people's houses to do site consults, and they're having problems with their plants, and they've either already built their own box or had someone else build one, is the location. They put it where it gets way too much shade or in full shade. So plants need at least 6 hours of direct sun a day, preferably more. So they're not like us. They don't prefer the shade. We put up this tent so it'd be more comfortable for me, but plants like shade. They need it to live. And kind of what I always tell people is we can create shade, but we can't create the sun. And that's kind of what you can see behind me. It's creating shade. And that's only 30% shade cloth. And that's more than efficient for the plants. So when you're planting, say, under a tree or something, a live oak that never drops its leaves, you're at 50, 70% shade. So the plants will just never really take off. They'll always be kind of spindly. And then in the winter, when the sun sets further in the south, you're even limiting the sun more and more. So really what you need to focus on is a place that gets at least 6 hours of sunlight year round. So really think about the winter and how much further it drops down in the sky, not just directly overhead like it is in the summer. Another consideration, the site location is level. So you want it fairly level. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're not building a house, but you don't want a big steep, incline where the water is going to drain weird. So, a couple percent isn't an issue, but so definitely want to look for level. So those are the two main things. So the next, we're going to just go right into the soil. So like I said, I'm a farmer, and I've always been a dirt farmer, and that's how I believe in farming, is from the soil up. It's, next to the location, it's kind of a complex issue, so we really won't be able to go too in depth with it today. So I've kind of been thinking about how to talk about it in a simple form, and there really kind of isn't any easy way, except that soil is a living thing, and dirt is inert. It's just dead. So we build roads and houses on dirt, and soil is what we grow vegetables and trees and such in. The compost you buy at home garden centers or even a lot of landscaping companies, it's not soil. It's like this kind of gray area somewhere between. So you can use it as a base, but what you really need to do is you need to add a lot of organic matter. And organic matter is, you know, it can be leaves and branches and all sorts of other things that aren't fully decomposed all the way. So you want to add them to your boxes when they still have a little bit of organic matter going on. So those are the two basics, and then you want to add amendments to it. So if you think about your soil like a recipe, so say, you know, just something basic, maybe has 1 or 2 different ingredients, and, you know, it might be okay, but it's not going to be like a great recipe that you've, you know, spent a lot of time and effort on and put in lots of different ingredients to get a complex dish. So think about your soil as a living thing. And so, you know, right now, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them over to Luke. So, you know, that is a very important thing that I see people not focus on enough. They focus on everything above ground and not what's going on underground.
So we have our first question on soil amending from Kat. Unfortunately, I used half organic raised bed soil and half free compost from RR. My plants did not do as well this year, so I want to know how I can fix my soil for fall. So,
okay,
it's not good. What can they do to fix it?
Well, I got a question from Kat. Thank you. I'm not 100% sure on the question, to be honest. I'm not sure what RR is. So,
well, they said half organic raised bed soil, half free compost.
Okay.
Work out bad soil.
Okay.
What can you do to amend it, or you just have to replace it all
So,
together?
if you're in the situation where you've already started and maybe your soil isn't where you want it to be, and usually the easiest way to tell that is your plants just aren't producing. They're not vibrant, they're not healthy, they've got lots of pests, they're just kind of stunted. That's usually the soil is a big issue. So, you know, a good bad compost you can actually buy at the home stores is mushroom compost. So mushroom compost is a real good organic matter that hasn't broken down all the way. It's safe because the medium that they grow mushrooms in has to be sterile, so you're not going to end up with contaminants. So what I would suggest, depending on the size of your growing area, is, you know, think about all the work that plant has done for you. So it's given you all of your crops, but on top of that, it's also grown a whole plant that you've taken out. And, you know, so every time you're going to replant, make sure and add some new compost, and then also add a balanced fertilizer. And I only use organic, and it's up to y'all if you want to or not. But use a balanced fertilizer. So the measurements on it, the NPK, they need to be in a certain ratio that plants like. So the first is nitrogen. That's what you want the highest. Usually on organic, you're going to see about an 824 or something like that. Sometimes you see a 422. And you kind of want them in that ratios. You want the organic or the nitrogen the highest, the phosphorus the least, and then the potassium next. And that's just how the plant takes up those nutrients. So mix some of that in as well. And then also, if you haven't, I would suggest throughout the growing season feeding with Alaska Naturals micronutrients. So plants, on top of the major 3, they need a whole bunch of other micronutrients. So you need to feed those as well. We got another question coming in. Go ahead, Luke.
It's from Swati. Hi there. What percentage of your planter box would you want to be compost versus soil?
Sure. That's a great question. Thank you. What percent of from Swati, the percent of the box you'd want compost opposed to organic? I usually do about 50-50. So when we talk about organic matter, heat or hot is a word that's often used, and that refers to the actual temperature of it. So it can't be too hot and you actually plant this little plant in it. So if I plant this little plant in super hot compost, it's going to burn it and kill the roots. And a real hot compost, you can actually feel it to the touch. And so that's why I tone it down to about 50%. Again, that's going to depend on how hot the compost is. So, or how hot the organic matter is. Sorry about that. We got another question?
Mary, as soil is so important and often overlooked, can you give us a soil 101? Maybe just talk about how we'll do that later.
Sure. Mary, yeah, a question about the importance of soil and kind of a 101. I could talk about it for probably longer than you want. I mean, I have a bucket of soil sitting here. I love to smell soil. But the 101 of soil, I guess the easiest would be this, is what does it smell like? So when you smell it, does that smell like good, healthy soil to you? Something that smells living, or does it not have a smell? If it doesn't have a smell, it's because it's not living. So I don't know if you've ever been in the forest after a fresh rain or something like that, but that smell, that kind of earthy, microbial smell is what you're going for. How to achieve that does take time. You know, you can't just make beautiful soil overnight. It takes time and effort. So we are definitely going to be focusing that on another class, actually, because it is something I'm very, very passionate about. So that's the basic 101. Does it smell good?
Probably next webinar will be all soil, right?
Yeah, Luke just mentioned that. Probably the next webinar will be almost exclusively focused on soil. So a couple not this Tuesday, but next. So I think that's probably about all the time we have for the soil. Do you have one more question? It looks like. Oh yeah, a lot of questions. Okay, Luke, give me 2 more questions, and we're gonna have to move on to the next subject. Sorry, people.
This isn't necessarily soil. Can a location be too sunny?
No, will be the easiest answer. No, that's. Oh, sorry. I guess you guys didn't hear the question Luke asked me. Can a location be too sunny? My answer is no, because I can create shade. You know, in a perfect world, if I got, you know, 8 to 10 hours of sun started in the morning, in the afternoon it was cupped off, but in the winter I still had full sun, that would be great. But I've never seen that happen in my life. So I just say, give me all the sun you can and I'll figure it out from there. One more question about soil, Luke, and then we'll kind of move on.
Yeah.
Or no?
Well, someone's asking about mushroom compost.
Sure.
Is that something you?
So mushroom compost is probably my favorite.
Beth Blanchard.
All right, Beth, thanks for the question. I love mushroom compost. I absolutely love it. In Central Texas, we are very lucky to be near Kitchen Pride mushrooms in Gonzales, and they sell it in bulk. That's extensively what I used on my farm. I spread hundreds of cubic yards of it a year. I absolutely love it. When we're talking about hot compost, that is a hot compost, probably in the 180 to 200 degree range. So when I was spreading it on my farm, I would spread it a couple inches, but I was incorporating it into about 12 inches. So we're talking about a ratio of 20% or less. So absolutely love mushroom compost. It's a sterile compost because of mushrooms. So yeah, I absolutely love it. In the bag stuff, I've used and smelled, and I love it. I wish there's mushroom compost everywhere. So thank you for all the questions on the soil. We'll go ahead and move on to the next question, or the next kind of topic, which is going to be irrigation and watering your crops. So I wouldn't say 100%, but probably 99% of my farming career has been with on vegetables as drip irrigation. Where they used to be in larger ag, growing alfalfa and different things and like that, they use overhead irrigation more. So kind of what I have is some of the parts of a basic drip irrigation system. It's really not as complicated as it sounds. There's just a couple key components. And so I'm going to try and break it down as simple as I can real quick. We may do a whole course on it where we have a little better camera work and I can zoom in on things, but we'll just have to work on that. So the way drip irrigation works is it has tubes like this. They also sell stuff that's flat. And basically you run it in your beds and it just has a drip of water at a time. So the reason I prefer it, there's a lot of reasons actually. So it uses considerably less amount of water than overhead irrigation, anywhere from 60 to 70%. There's been several studies about the increased yields you get from drip irrigation. I've seen some studies that say 90% increase. I don't know if that's true or not because I've always done it. But the biggest thing to me is it reduces your fungal diseases tremendously because you're watering right at the base of the plant. You're not getting the leaf sweat. And with the high humidity we have in Central Texas, you really don't need to be getting your leaf sweat. You need to keep them as dry as possible. So that's why I use it. So the basic how it's set up, you have a pressure reducer, which basically takes the pressure coming out of your hose and reduces it to about 10 PSI. Depending on where you're at, you can have PSI anywhere from 40 up to 120 PSI. And the reason you want to reduce it is these have little built-in emitters in them. And if you have a high pressure, it literally blows the emitter out and then the system doesn't work anymore. So once you reduce the pressure, it alleviates that problem. So after the pressure reducer, then you want to go through a filter. I use a 200 micron filter. And the reason I do that is just to take out little tiny particulates that would clog my emitters in my tube. And again, if you clog an emitter, then it's like you might as well not have it. They're fairly inexpensive, to install. So you do those two components first, then you run it to your box. This is poly tubing, 1/2 inch. You run it to the box, and then with some of these random fitties, these are called easy locks. Like I said, I can't really show you exactly how you put all these together. 1 second, I'll answer questions. So that's kind of the basics, and then you just run several lines of these the length of the bed. So we go the 8-foot length, and usually 4 are enough for the water of the bed. The amount of time you water dramatically changes on the season. So right now, we have customers watering their boxes anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour plus a day. In the winter, it can be, you know, as little as every few days. You can install an automatic timer at the beginning, have that set up so you don't even have to hassle with it. So I strongly recommend drip irrigation. So that's kind of the 101 there. And Luke's giving me the hand that he's got some questions. So go ahead, Luke.
If your leaves are showing some yellow or some sunburn, would overhead irrigation be suggested? Seems to be the question is, overhead irrigation for yellow leaves? So
the question is, there's some yellowing of leaves, and would you do overhead irrigation to solve that? No, you would not. The only time I've actually seen irrigation here work on vegetables successfully was on a blackberry farm where they installed misters to drop the ambient temperature. So they created basically like an enormous swamp cooler for them. But they shut them off earlier enough in the day where it burned off. So you're not really giving your plant a shower in the way that like you would take one. So if you're hot from working out in the yard or something, you go inside and a nice cool shower sounds great. But what you're doing to the plant is shocking it. So you can actually cause more problems. You can cause the fungal issues to grow. When water hits the ground, it can splash up on the underside of the leaves, which is a good way to spread fungal diseases, things like that. So you know, it's hard to diagnose a plant problem without seeing the leaf, because there's lots of things that can cause these yellow leaves. It can be a lack of nitrogen, it can be iron, it could be a virus, it could, you know, be lots of different things. But I wouldn't say, in my experience, I've ever seen overhead irrigation solve that problem. Any other questions there on kind of the irrigation? Okay, so didn't really have any questions on the irrigation, it looks like. So our next question, or next subject, is going to be on plants. So we got some different plants here in front of me. Like I said, we start most of our plants from scratch. A few of the herbs and things like that we might buy, but we try and grow them in-house. And the big reason we do that is so we can select the right varieties. You know, Home Depot or the other big places like that grow plants for a whole region and not region specific. So I really like to grow varieties that are best for our area. And deciphering the seed catalogs to figure that out can be challenging. Many of the seed catalogs and the companies that produce seed are from the north. So when you read their seed catalogs and they say plant in May, that's May in May, not May in Central Texas. So you need to take that into account, and you need to look at the soil germination temperatures. I've talked to lots of people where they've had that mistake of planting carrots or something in May and maybe even June, because that's what the catalog said, but that is not the time we plant them here in Central Texas. So picking the right plant is really important. Look for ones that say heat tolerant, ones that talk about resistance to viruses and different types of wilts, because those are very common in our soil here. And the reason they're more common in our soil opposed to maybe in the north is we never really freeze hard enough in Central Texas to ever kill the soil pathogens. You know, where we're at, our frost line is 1 inch. You need to get a lot deeper than that to kill the pathogens. So they really build up in the soil, and, you know, adding compost and things like that does help, but you're just never going to completely get rid of them. So looking for plants that have lots of disease resistance is important. And picking the right time of year. So you really need to know when to plant things. There are some really good planting guides from the Aggies there in College Station. I know it's against UT, but they do have a good planting guide. And then, you know, I would say they're very, very accurate. You can push it a little bit if you want to just be experimental. But so Luke's raising his hand. He's got a question here. Hold on.
Catherine Catherine, is there a list of seeds that work for our region?
Okay, the question from Catherine, is there a list of seeds that work for our region? There is not a list per se that I've ever seen. Someone may have created one. The big thing is when you're reading the seed catalogs, it's kind of like deciphering a mystery a little bit. Again, trying to look for those key words, heat tolerant, or when they say short daylight in the north during the winter, that's 8 to 6 hours, something like that. Well, we still get over 10 hours in the winter here, so that may not be something we're looking for. What we're looking for is fast growing. So you need to kind of learn the hidden lingo that's in the seed catalogs. So really look for the viruses, heat tolerant, things like that. I wish that there was this is the perfect variety, but when it comes to seed production, seeds come and go. So they're all grown by seed farmers, and sometimes they just don't work out or they lose the crop. And so seeds don't always stay in stock, and so they're always changing a little bit. So it's more reading the kind of the fine print and the hidden language of seed catalogs. Luke's got another question?
From Samantha, what vegetables are resistant to disease in our area?
All right, Samantha's got a question about which vegetables are resistant to disease in our area. Unfortunately, it's too broad. They're all going to be slightly resistant to different things. So like this tomato plant right here is the Grand Marshal. So it's a big slicing tomato. It's resistant to some of the viruses, but say mosaic virus or something like that, that isn't going to really affect this tomato plant, or different peppers. So there's a lot of different viruses, so that's why you have to just read each one individually, and they always have abbreviation codes in them. At the bottom of the seed, it'll tell you what diseases they're resistant to. What I will say is there are certain places around the world which we have a similar climate to, and one of them, oddly enough, is Italy, and have had a lot of success growing Italian crops in Austin. They do really well, and they have a good disease package. So unfortunately, it's kind of learning each different crop, and then even almost experimenting. I've grown 5 or 10 different varieties of, say, green zucchini to find the one I like, and I find the one I like, and then after a couple of years the seeds disappear. So then I kind of go through that whole process again. But again, it's reading the seed catalogs. When they're talking about zucchini, they're talking about an open leaf where you can access the zucchinis easily and things like that. So I wish I could just give you a straight, easy answer, but unfortunately, farming and gardening rarely has just a simple answer. Luke, do you have another question there?
No more
Nope.
questions.
Okay. Well, that's about 30 minutes here, so just kind of want to open up the last little bit to just any general questions anyone has. So
And
just
people should submit questions through the Q&A button.
okay. Luke said if you have a question, submit it through the Q&A button. I'm not looking at it, so hopefully that makes sense. So any general questions, kind of about anything? We got about a little over 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes. No questions.
Free ball.
Okay, well, I guess no one has any burning questions in their mind right now. So,
Got a couple. Oh, now they're coming in.
Oh, now they're coming in. A little bit of delay. Well, now I'm going to talk about something different now, folks.
What is your,
Hold on, and I do want to mention, so, our website is cultivatetex.com. I would recommend if you didn't go there and enter your email to do that, and then it'll sign you up for our newsletter, so you'll be notified about our next classes and things like that. Yep, cultivatetex.com.
Okay,
all right.
Here's a good one from Swati. What is your favorite plant to grow?
Oh, a question about my favorite plant. All right,
Swati.
From Swati. Favorite vegetable. All right, well, first I'm going to tell you about my arch nemesis, which is the banana plant. So I had been on a mission for probably 5 years to grow banana plants to production. No particular reason why, except that I hadn't done it. I would usually get to like the 50th leaf, and from my research, it's like the 52nd or 53rd is the actual bananas. So that's the one I can never do. My one I love the most is probably still a carrot. I just think it's really cool. Carrots are tiny little seeds. You plant it, you pull it out, it's this bright orange thing. I couldn't tell you how many hundreds of thousands I planted, and I still think it's cool.
Carrots.
Carrots. I
Okay.
gotta go with
We got
carrots.
17 questions now.
All right, we got a whole bunch of questions coming in. We'll go through them as fast as we can here.
How long after you plant my boxes will things start to grow?
All right,
Or how long till I can eat them?
sure. So the question is about how long after the boxes are planted can you start eating? It's going to depend on the season. So right now, a lot of the summer stuff, zucchini and yellow squash, you're looking at about 45 to 50 days. Tomatoes, peppers, 65, 70, something around there. Say French breakfast radishes, you can eat them in 21 days. So it's going to depend on the crop. Waiting for the first harvest is always the hardest thing of any gardener. But once you get that first harvest, that's why you do succession planting. And succession planting is where you don't plant the whole box up, you leave room for the next planting, so you always have stuff coming in. So average is probably about 60 days of just waiting, but you get to enjoy them growing and all that, and then you get to keep it going. So next question.
All right, from Beth, preferred method of home composting: open bins, worms.
All right. From Beth, question is preferred method of home composting. It's not the most efficient, but it is my preferred is sheet composting, because I wouldn't say I'm lazy, it's just I'm busy. And so I just let nature do its thing. So basically that's, doing the green and the brown matter stack, alternating, and letting nature do its magic. If you want to accelerate it, you can toss it and turn it.
Green and brown matter.
Okay, look, ask me to clarify what green and brown matter is. So green matter is things that are literally green. So lawn clippings, if you're not using pesticides and herbicides on them and things like that, vegetable scraps, all that stuff. Brown matter is going to be, dead leaves, cardboard, and different stuff like that, shredded paper, and then alternate stacking it. I usually would do mine in kind of 4x4 pallet boxes, so it kind of stays neat. And then if I ever decide to, get energetic, I'll just toss it from one bin to the next. It's not the fastest method, but that's how I do it.
From Annie, for tomato plants, is it best to pull them now? Should I pull tomato plants now and replant?
That is a great question, Annie. The question is, should I pull my tomato plants? So that's kind of a personal choice, to be honest, and it depends on the variety. Independent or indeterminate will keep growing. You can kind of, I don't know if you can they see the huge one back there?
Yep.
All right, so the one behind us is an indeterminate cherry tomato. They'll keep growing and growing. They're going to shut off production because of temperature. Tomatoes kind of stop setting about 77 degrees. So they'll shut off. They'll start picking back up usually in mid-September when the temperatures start dropping down. So it's kind of a personal choice if you want to have the room. When I farm, I would do a whole separate crop. So you would do your separate fall crop, which you still have time to do. We're planting them right now for people, and then those will start setting and have a nice vigorous crop. So my personal way of doing it is usually a second crop, just so the plants are nice and vigorous and I end the year with a nice tomato crop. Next one.
From Beth, best way to moisturize soil.
Okay.
Presumably beyond watering, is there anything more you can do to help with moisture?
Okay. The question is best way to moisturize soil. I maybe referring to moisture retention. So that's one important thing of the organic matter. So every % of organic matter you get up, raise, it holds more moisture. I'll give you one part of my secret recipe that you can add in is bentonite. Bentonite holds 50 times its weight in water, but don't add too much because it kind of is a sticky clay. So you can do things like that. But build up your organic matter, holds moisture in your beds longer or in the ground even. So, every % you raise it, it's just, that's that much better. Another one?
From Kathy, when should we plant tomatoes for fall?
The question is, when should you plant tomatoes for fall? We are planting them now. Well, in about 10 days we start. So it gives them about 60 days, and hopefully the temperature, it's a guess, hoping the temperatures drop right when they're at the time to start setting. So I'm fine with now, and you can keep going. It depends what part of Texas you're in, but down here or even further south, sometimes the frost never happens. So just get after it.
From Mary, what's the best thing to do right now to prep for fall?
Okay, the question is, what's the best thing to do right now to prep for fall? I'm a huge proponent of keep keep planting and growing stuff, so you're always harvesting. If you don't want to work outside in the heat, you could plant a cover crop of your legumes, something like a southern black-eyed pea, because they're nitrogen fixing, which means you have to inoculate the beans, but they take nitrogen from the air to actually affix it to their roots, and then you pull them out and compost them, and some of the microfiber roots will stay in the soil, and then you add that composted beans back in, or you can cut them down and till them back in. So if you want to do a cover crop for the summer, that's what I'd recommend.
From L, I have cherry tomatoes that just aren't ripening. Any suggestions? They're staying green on the vine.
The question is, cherry tomatoes not ripening on the vine. Unless they've been bitten by a bug that's stopping them to ripen, I've never had one not ripen. No, they take a long time. I guess kind of that follow-up question I would have to probably talk to is, did you have them ripen and then they shut off? I've never personally experienced them just never ripen. Sometimes they just seem to take forever. I have had that problem.
Okay, next one. Hannah. Hello, we grew some Japanese eggplant this year and saw some holes in them. What would you suggest as a good organic spray to use for eggplant?
Sure. The question is organic spray for eggplant. They had some, sounds like bug damage. Got some bugs in my legs. So there is a lot of summer pests. If they were grasshoppers, oftentimes grasshoppers will bite eggplant on the skin and create like a scar, and it sort of looks like a hole. The best thing for grasshoppers organic is no-low bait. It's a deterrent though, or not a deterrent, it takes time, so you're not going to knock down. So you have to apply that at the beginning of the season. Keep your grass short around your beds or where they're growing, that'll help. As far as other pests like leaf-footed bugs or things like that, I do use pyrethrum. I wait till the bees are done with their work and I'll spray. But that's probably about it.
Donna, what are micronutrients in soil?
Okay, so the question is, what are micronutrients in soil? Pardon me. There's a lot, but we're going to it'll be talking things like boron, copper, calcium, molybdenum, and they're used in minute amounts by plants, but they all have vital roles to play. So they're the same as us. We have all these different compounds and elements in us, and if one dips too low, something doesn't work right. We're too tired, or we're whatever happens. Well, it's the same type of thing. There's things on peppers where they're not getting enough calcium uptake, and so the peppers start getting holes and just look horrible. So it's a micronutrient, but it's in very, very small amounts, and you can go overboard. So using a natural one is something I strongly recommend. It's put this way. You apply about 10 pounds of micronutrients to the acre. Okay, so it's not very much. You can easily go overboard. So when you're doing it, more of that is not better. So follow the instructions, okay? But it is very important, and it's something I see a lot of people having problems with.
Jerry is asking, what level of production can I expect from each planter box?
All right. Jerry's asking, what level of production can I expect from each planter box? For us, what we usually recommend is 1 planter box per adult for kind of the average vegetable eater. We have some customers that do 2 and 3 per person if they're plant-based. So they produce a lot of food, surprising amount. And part of that is to the way we grow them, is the succession planting, and knowing all the crops in my head, probably a little more than I should. But hitting the timing right, knowing what grows best when, being able to intercrop. Say if you're going to plant a tomato plant, well, I know this tomato plant's going to take a long time to get big, so I might be able to sneak another crop in real quick next to it, something like that. So there's a lot of way to maximize your growing area. But 1 planter box per person gets you a good amount, and you can still get your favorite stuff at the store if you want.
And this feeds my entire family.
Yep. Luke mentioned here that the ones behind us feeds his whole entire family. So and they're all vegetarian. There's 6 boxes, so they don't have to buy any vegetables at the store. So got time for a couple more questions probably, and then we're going to have to wrap it up here.
I'll do my best. Lori is asking, is it okay to build a raised bed on a slope if top of the bed is level?
Okay, great question, Lori. Can you build a raised bed on a slope if the top is level? Yeah, you can. Like up here, it's a lot of rock, so it, takes a jackhammer to get it level on the bottom. What's going to happen is when it hits it on the high side, the water with capillary action, it will go down like this, so it's not going to sit as evenly. So this side might dry out a little sooner, but I wouldn't let it stop me from growing. I would always grow if I could. So just kind of be aware the top side might dry out a little more than the bottom side.
All right. Are the zinnias you planted for shade, pest control, or just to have flowers?
Just to have flowers and be pretty.
What's the question?
Oh, sorry. I keep answering Luke's question without telling you what they are. The question is, are the zinnias for any practical purpose more than aesthetics? And they are just to look pretty right now. All right, Luke, we'll do a couple more questions till.
Yep, a couple more.
Yep.
7:07.
Yep, so till 10.
Is it too late to plant summer crops right now?
All right, the question is it too late to plant summer crops right now? And it is not. It's a little more on the borderline with zucchini and yellow squash and things like that. Again, depending where you're at. If it's a little cooler where your area, you can get away with it. We are planting tomatoes, eggplants, peppers and all of those, okra, basil and some things. We're still planting arugula, purslane, southern beans, black-eyed peas, all of those are still being planted. I'll probably sneak in another crop of the zucchini and yellow squash. I have some to plant right now, so I shouldn't say I'm not planting them, but I don't have much runway left. And I'll probably do another planting early September. All right, Luke, 2 more.
All right. How do you keep birds from eating all your tomatoes, or pests
All right.
in general from?
So the question was about how to keep birds from eating your tomatoes. It's really difficult, to be honest, to get birds away. As pests can be an issue. Squirrels are a big issue. It depends what kind of pest, what kind of bird it is. There's things you can do. Have had limited success with those predator balls that have a big black eye on it. But nature's pretty smart, and it usually figures out our little tricks. If some of you are old enough to remember CDs, you can hang CDs and them spinning in the tree. The reflection can kind of distort birds, but really, unless it's just really bad, you could net it, but it's just kind of sharing the crop. Usually with squirrels, the recommendation is to bribe them, which I hate to say because I do not like squirrels as a farmer, but buy a cheap bird feed like sunflower seeds and feed them something they like more than your crops. All right, last question, folks.
Michelle is saying, my raised bed garden beefsteak tomatoes are as big as cherry tomatoes. Haha. It gets 10 to 12 hours of sunlight. Is it sun or soil I have that's faulty?
All right, the question is beefsteaks that look like cherry tomatoes. It gets a lot of sun, so that's not the issue. Without seeing your plant, it's slightly difficult to say. But my guess would probably be a nutrition aspect. The plant just isn't getting fed. Tomatoes are notoriously heavy feeders. They love compost. There's lots of different ways to do that, but that would just be a guess. But again, without seeing it, it would be a guess. And usually once, I hate to say it, but once a plant gets kind of stunted, it's real hard to make it come back. And I know it's hard to pull something out. You kind of get this attachment to it that you want to take care of it. But nature and farming and gardening is all about a cycle, and that's, life and death. So, learn what you can, and then kind of go forward from there. Something I've told a lot of people over the years that I've kind of helped them again start farming is, if you're not failing, you're not farming. So make sure you're learning something, and then it's not a failure. Just keep a journal, or do different things, and just keep trying. Don't quit. Just keep trying. And so I hope you all enjoyed this. Like I said, okay. All right. Sorry, Luke interrupted. So I hope you all enjoyed this. And like I said, we're going to do another class next Tuesday, most likely on soil, because that's something I think is really important. But I really enjoy the Q&A too, because I really want to answer the questions you have that are affecting you right this moment. So again, go to our website, cultivatetex.com. We're also on Facebook under the same name. We have an Instagram account and all that stuff. If you have any questions, you can submit them through the website and get in touch with us through there. So I guess that's about it. Been fun. First live stream for me. So, you know, I guess I'm a 21st century farmer now. So thank you all. And thank you, Luke, for all your help. Have a great night, folks.